Hi, this is Greg Downey with Perham Ventures. I have a huge opportunity today that I know you guys are going to absolutely love. I've got a friend and a guest today, Brett Schwartz. He's the founder, CEO, and the man in charge of Capital Gains Tax Solutions. We actually met through a family office group and got connected up, and we connect on a lot of different things. He's invited me to some events, met several of his partners, and the more I've gotten into what he does, it's kind of mind blowing. And I do a lot of stuff with early stage companies, growth companies. We do M&A, we see exits, but I didn't know what he knows. And so I'm trying to introduce him to a lot of our clients and a lot of our partners because of what he does have. So where you're going to get today, the value is he's got so much knowledge and experience of how do you preserve your wealth on exiting your business. Like we're all trying to raise capital, put our business together, launch them, be successful, have a good exit, but you lose 30 to 40% of that through taxes. So what's the best way to preserve that legally, fundamentally, reinvest that, grow your portfolio? And that's where I've got Brett Schwartz. So I'm going to introduce Brett here. I'm going to let him tell you about himself because I couldn't do it justice. But Brett, welcome to the program. Excited to talk to you today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Greg. Excited to be here.
So if you can, for our audience, Brett, what's your background and what led you into what you're doing today?
Absolutely. I fell in love with solving problems for people, mostly in real estate at a young age. And at that point, it was my dad and my brother and I trying to solve problems by building houses in the Bay Area is when it first began. And I think the entrepreneur spirit kicked in when I saw how much wealth that can be accumulated through owning your own business and building real estate and kind of being your own boss. That's kind of what my dad and mom were growing up. But fast forward, I had a chance to study and practice multifamily brokerage at a place called Marcus and Millichap, where I learned how to underwrite properties and how to construct real estate transactions from one of the best companies in the country. But it wasn't always great. Things fell apart in the '08 crash. And I went from being like a wannabe real estate broker entrepreneur to like literally making like nothing, like close to nothing in 1 year, how bad it got. And living with my brother and my wife and I in his small condo with a baby, a first baby, and working at Cheesecake Factory. And so I always say to every entrepreneur out there, every person who's in a startup or has a dream and a passion for something, that sometimes it starts from the very, very bottom of financial challenges and stress. But that also clarified how much I loved, being able to solve problems with real estate owners, but also led me to finding out about a strategy that has changed my life and my career forever, called the Deferred Sales Trust, which ultimately helps people preserve their wealth and unlock freedom and make an impact with their wealth when exiting highly appreciated businesses or other assets. And so that's a little bit of the backstory. Also played basketball growing up, played in college. And I'm married with 5 kids. My wife and I, we live out here in Florida now. And we moved from California about a year ago. And that's how we got connected when I got to Florida.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you that. I didn't know that story about your family. I tell people that often. It's like most of the startups, and I have a book in the works. I've got a couple chapters, but every great entrepreneur that I've talked to, where they're humming along and they've got good momentum. When you really get to sit down with them and kind of unwrap the package, you realize that there was a part where it was just dire and they're at their lowest. But God's speak to us in the valleys, right? And we're not really listening at the peaks. So it's cool that you've had that journey. For those of us that aren't as educated as you in this area, and I like to dumb stuff down the 8th grade level, right? So I can digest it. Explain this deferred tax trust, right? What is it? How is it different than other ways of preserving wealth? If you can kind of just give me the basics on how it's structured and why it's so advantageous.
Yeah, most entrepreneurs or those who own businesses or real estate, they want freedom and flexibility with their wealth, right? They've made their wealth, they've earned their wealth, they've built their wealth on something that was amazing. And now it's multiple millions of exit dollars, which means typically somewhere between 25 and 50% of the proceeds are going to be crushed by capital gains tax. And so having a tax flow mindset along with a cash flow mindset and understanding how all of these things intertwine for the next venture that you're going to be either raising for or building with are so important. And the Deferred Sales Trust at its core is an installment sale that allows you to defer the tax, right? Defer paying the tax for a period of time. In fact, it's kind of like an IRA or a 401k. And we typically all know what those are, where you can put money into a retirement account and defer the tax until when? Until you receive payment. So the same concept is true for the deferred sales trust. And I'll give you an example. We just did a $8 million exit for a business owner in Colorado, and they had a zero basis. They were actually a C Corp, which is taxed at like one of the highest levels because it's very efficient up front typically, but gets crushed on the back end with double taxation. And so we were able to use the deferred sales trust to defer probably somewhere around 40 to 45% of the proceeds that would have been, that would have been exited to him. And for him and the family, it wasn't just retirement. It was being able to increase their cash flow, but also preserve their legacy with the wealth. You see, this business had been in the family for over 50 years. In fact, it was inherited, and then they ran it for another 25 plus years. And they looked at this as a way to honor their parents, right, who started the company, and essentially pass on the legacy of wealth to the future generations to do what? To start more companies. And this is the best part about this. We all want typically wealth plans that allow us to unlock the freedoms we desire. And for the entrepreneurs or the people that we serve, they typically want to be able to fund their next business venture. And this trust itself, while it's tax deferred and you don't pay tax until you receive personal payment, it can go into other business ventures, all tax deferred. Right. So we call this the go fund yourself scenario. And so the questions we ask people is, A, what are you selling for? Like, what is the sales price? What's the basis? What's the capital gains tax on that? And then B, what do you want to do with the money? And 99% of the time they say, well, I just want to reinvest it. And I say, well, where? And they say, well, back into real estate, back into another business venture, or maybe diversify a little bit into the stock market or go into some cryptocurrency. And then they look at the trust and they go, wow, so I can do with an extra amount of money, and it's super flexible and it's very tax efficient. People sign up, and this is what we've been doing. This is why we love it, because it's so flexible and so adjustable.
Very cool. No, I appreciate that. Now I can grasp kind of what you're doing. The other thing is, for people that are listening to this, a lot of our clients, as they're got their head down and they're moving, I can imagine there's a timing aspect to this. When is a good time to engage you in this process to make sure your ducks in a row? Because I imagine if this is something you can unwind once you've had that exit, it's too late. When is a good time for someone to start thinking about this process and to engage you to make sure everything is in order?
Yeah, it's human nature to typically, put it off until you have that, that offer on the table, or you're about to close escrow, and then maybe now you start to think about these things, because as entrepreneurs, we're so in the business all the time and growing, especially during the exit, the emotional part of that. You've built something for a long time, and it's all coming down to this sale, and it's multiple millions, it's tens of millions, right? And now you can fumble the ball, you will. We call it fumbling the ball when you don't have a tax plan, you haven't built a capital gains tax exit plan. And all of a sudden, 20, 30, 40, 50% is gone, right? For this silent partner, the IRS and the state, local authorities, right, have been with you the whole time, but really you've been doing all the work, right? So, it's part of the system we live in. But there's a better way, right? You can start planning now. And so the best answer is now. Now is a good time. When's now? Well, you have now until you exit, right? And hopefully you're going to be scaling your company to multiple $1 million of exits, tens of millions of dollars, and $100 million, $1 billion. No matter size you have, we can work with, whether it's a C Corp, S Corp, LLC. But timing is crucial, right? Because if you don't set it up prior to the close of escrow, prior to the buyers removing contingencies, then it's too late. And when it's too late, the tax is triggered. And those are the worst calls that we have. If someone calls us and says, I just sold my company for $5 or $10 million. I sold it 30 days ago or 2 weeks ago. I found you on the YouTube. I found your book. Can I still use the trust? And we're like, sorry, you can't. That's called constructive receipt. It is taxable. You're going to owe the tax. This is also why we take the pressure off when we work on a 100% conditional basis, meaning you don't have to pay anything unless and if you actually want to use the trust, and if your deal actually closes, but there's no obligation to do that. You can get out for any reason. And that gives people the chance to just relieve the pressure, get to know who we are, how it works. But it is very important that we set it up prior to the close of escrow. There's one little exception to that. We do have what's called the best 1031 exit plan. And so if you happen to own investment real estate, we can save a failed 1031 exchange if you're working with us in our strategic alliance that does the 1031 service. And that way you're able to have a backup plan, but that applies just to investment real estate owners, but everybody else, cryptocurrency, business owners, real estate owners that are selling primary homes, not investment real estate, need to set up a deferred sales trust prior to the transfer, prior to the sale.
Okay. I hope everybody is letting this soak in and really taking Brett up on his offer. I would highly recommend reaching out to him. You can get him at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. If you look at the video, the links below, there's ways to reach out to him. But he's been a good friend. He's a wealth of information. This is not something you want to overlook. We focus a lot on the earlier fundamentals and the data rooms and the transaction and the valuations and all that kind of stuff. This is just as important. And to get this knowledge, I mean, I've been in a few conversations even after meeting Brett meeting with some family offices that had some exits, and their story was pretty painful, where they had a nice exit. One was like a $40 million exit, and they set up a foundation, and they want money to the foundation, and that was going to take everything. And then at the end of it, I think a couple of years later, they look back and, they're looking at really having to pull the strings back to keep things going because they got hit so hard on the taxes, and that all could have been avoided because that's what they were doing. They wanted to reinvest in other companies, and that was just kind of taken away from them through capital gains. So this is a very tactical battle strategy that I can't stress enough to understand. Again, as an eye opener for me, I know some of the exit stuff and what you need to do from valuations and transactions, but this is a really a must have. I know all of our portfolio companies, all of our clients that we interact with are going to be exposed to this. And that's why, again, Brett, I appreciate you spending time with me and explain just what this is, because even seeing you speak at these family office events, it's an eye opener for a lot of these people in the room these are 8, 9, 10 figure type people. And they're all kind of coming at you going, I didn't know this existed. So what you're doing is really good work in helping people out, man.
Hey, I appreciate that. Yeah, we believe we are on a mission, right? And our mission is to really help people unlock the capital gains tax, to unlock freedom and impact. And it means a little bit different things to different people. And to the extent that you have a clear vision of what you're trying to achieve post-close, will determine what's the best course of action and best plan. And the deferred sales trust often is just that great, amazing plan that gives you that flexibility to invest, to diversify, and to get timing on your side too. There's no timing restrictions. Also, for the ultra high net worth individuals that have like $1 billion exits, they have what's called estate tax. And I think this is an important thing to touch on. Most people either have to buy a bunch of life insurance, they have to give it all away, or set up foundations that can be really challenging. Whereas with the deferred sales trust plus, it's 2.0, we can eliminate the estate tax in one sale in one day on one exit forever. And so if you have a $1 billion exit and you're going to be exiting, we can use the DST plus to receive the capital. And that $1 billion plus all of the growth over your lifetime is outside of your taxable estate, which eliminates that 40% death tax. And this is massive, because most of us, we've been taught that you get a stepped up basis upon your death and then your kids walk away tax free. Well, that's only part of the story. That's just capital gains tax. Has nothing to do with the estate tax. And so if you've seen the show, I don't know if you've seen it, Yellowstone, there's Kevin Costner, and then his daughter Beth is the attorney. And the entire show is centered around this big piece of land in Montana from the family. And he is the last, he's one of the, his wife's already died. So Kevin's like, if he dies, the estate tax is triggered, right? And so in the meantime, everyone's trying to get the land all the different ways. But Beth's like, Dad, in one of the episodes, she's like, hey, like, Dad, if you don't sell it now and you die, it's going to get taken away anyways, because the death tax is going to kick in. Right. And so so I'm like, every time I watch it, I'm like, hey, Kevin, the DST plus, man, like we can help you. And like, we'd solve the whole show. Like it'd be good. Right. It does take a sale, but upon that sale, we can eliminate that estate tax, that death tax, which has huge implications to make an impact for the next 20 years, because there's about $84 trillion estimated to transfer. And this is the battle for the most amount of wealth in the history of the planet that's ever transferred in a 20-year period that we know of. And it's happening. And so we're on this front lines of this wealth transfer. And so to be able to eliminate that estate tax, to defer that capital gains tax, and to invest these funds into other businesses, other real estate, can solve the housing crisis, can solve a lot of big challenges that we're facing, but also create more jobs and more tax revenue, which is ultimately why these things work, right? Mm-hmm. The government does want to incentivize us to create businesses, to build housing, and that's what creates more jobs, and those more jobs creates more tax revenue. So it's actually a win-win for everybody, but you've got to know how to do it, when to do it, and that's why we exist.
Cool. Well, again, we're talking to Brett Schwartz with CapitalGainsTaxSolutions.com. You're involved in social media. You've written a book. Can you tell us other areas that people can find you and a little bit about your book?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. And so we came out with the book about a year ago, hit #1 bestseller on Amazon on some of the wealth and real estate categories, which is pretty cool. We have people like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank in the book. There's people like Don Winter with DLP Capital, and people like David Young, a top financial advisor in the country. And essentially, it's a part of my story about learning about the deferred sales trust, the beginning of the entrepreneurial journey, working at the Cheesecake Factory, working the side hustles at Basketball Tournaments, but still working at Marcus & Millichap by day, learning about this in the 08 crash, and then the journey to become a trustee and be able to offer this service to my clients, and so much more. And I know a lot of other smart people talking about business and entrepreneurs. In fact, Kevin talks about Mentor to Millions and all the companies that he's built and how he's giving back. And so that's what we're trying to do, get in the book with a lot of really smart people that have a great wisdom and advice. So it's more than just a tax book. We geek out about tax, but it's more than that. It is about an entrepreneurial journey and a story. So you can check that out on Amazon, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan.
Cool. No, I appreciate that. So kind of transitioning to the personal stuff, right? It's, hindsight's always 2020. I wish I had good mentors and people like you early in my career to kind of help avoid some of these things. But if you were to look back, 20 years, what's the best advice you can give to yourself?
Great question. Yeah. If I had to look back 20 years, the best advice I could give to myself would be to stay the course and focus on working harder on myself than I did on my job, right? Growing up, it was get the A's or at least the B's, get into college, right? Get that basketball scholarship, graduate from college. My brother and I were the first to graduate college from either side of our family. And so that was a really big deal. But those are all external things that are help to accomplish, and are good things. But the focus is so focused on the outcome, the external, right? Versus the eternal and the internal, which is the leadership, personal development, faith, finance, fitness, these major things, right? Fun, fulfillment, and those gifts, looking at the gifts that I've been given and maximizing those gifts, right? To the maximum potential. And so I would say focus on working harder on myself in the sense of those things that are leadership focused, that are faith focused, right? That would have doing that sooner, right? And it's hard. It's easier to say that now that I'm 40, I have 5 kids, and I've been married almost 15 years. But that would be the advice I would tell let's say my 20-year-old self if I could go back 20 years from now. Very good.
All right. So what is your #1 business book that you've read? And then what's your best personal book that you read and that you'd recommend to people?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with the business one right now. There's kind of there's 2 of them right now I want to highlight. So the first one is called Am I Being Too Subtle? Okay. And it's by Sam Zell. And if you haven't learned or heard about Sam, he's a billionaire real estate entrepreneur, and he's an icon in American history. He's incredible. Okay. And I would recommend the Audible book because he reads it, right? It's him reading it. And it's like a wise grandpa that you wish you all would have had. Great sense of humor, so much wisdom, amazing stories. Am I Being Too Subtle? Sam Zell. Get on Audible. I promise you, it's one of the best books I've ever read on business, on life, on all of the things. He actually passed away about a year ago. And so it's even more touching, I think, for his legacy. So that one. The other business book would be, in fact, it's actually a masterclass. The book is good too. And it's The Art of Negotiation is the masterclass. And then the Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference is the book. Okay. So I read the book. Okay. Got a little bit. I felt like I got 10 to 15%. Right. And then I listened to the Audible book and I felt like I got maybe 20, 30%. But then I watched the masterclass, and it's an app that you can call Masterclass, and look up Chris Voss. And I literally probably watched that masterclass 50 times. Like listened to it while I worked out, like over like a year and a half, and it taught me how to negotiate. I thought I knew how to negotiate, Greg, and communicate is also a better way to put it, until I listened to this audio masterclass and watched it. Okay. So those would be the two right now. And as far as personal book, wow. So for me, I read the Bible every single day. So my faith is based on the Bible. I've read it every single day for, at least 10 plus years. Might have missed a day or here or so there. So that's the foundation of my faith. I also like anything that has to do like World War II. I actually read the book Killing the Rising Sun. Okay. And this is a book on World War II and the war there. Like, it's just incredible insight, incredible, like, just history you can learn. So I love that book. That would be like the kind of the personal one that are like non-business, if you will.
All right. Excellent. No, I appreciate you spending time with me and really explaining what you do and the intricacies for entrepreneurs. Again, if you want to look up Brett, I would highly recommend checking out capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Again, capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. It's Brett Schwartz. He's on social media. Hook up with him. He's definitely a guy you want to have in your pocket and in your court. And Brett, thank you so much. I know our audience appreciates you making time for everybody, and I look forward to working with you on a few more projects.
Absolutely, Greg. It's been my pleasure. Thanks for interviewing me on the show today, and thanks everyone for listening, and hope to connect with everyone real soon.
All right, thanks.